I hope that you're all available to see my screen. Can you please confirm?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
You can hear me okay, perfect.
Yes, I believe that all the panelists in the room are now co-hosts to this session. You can turn on your camera if you want as co-host, and you will also have the right to share the PowerPoint and control the session. Again, this is Amy Tianyi from UNITAR New York office. Thank you so much for your participation this morning. We will kick off the session momentarily, and I will leave the floor to you.
Thank you so very much. We are very excited to host this session and to be here with all of you and to see all my fellow panelists. Welcome. We're going to have an interesting, very active session where we will try and hope to be able to share with you information about SDG synergies that we think will be really important for the second half of implementation of the SDGs. My name is Yvonne Lobos. I'm a senior expert at LCI, Stockholm Environment Institute, in our Latin America office. And I will have the honor of opening the session and giving the floor to our first panelist. And the idea for this session, you'll see in a little bit, we'll go through the agenda. But now at the start is for us to have some words from key experts and hopefully a couple of our experts that have used these tools in their countries to learn about their experiences and what they see in terms of the utility and the potential of systems thinking tools to help us accelerate SDG implementation in a way that is well thought out, that is strategic, and that takes us to a better place when we hit our deadline in 2030. So I would definitely like to start with Dr. Åsa Persson. She is our Deputy Director at the Stockholm Environment Institute, and she's also one of the authors of this year's UN Global Sustainable Development Report. So we look very much forward to what you're going to tell us, Åsa, and please go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone joining this training session. I hope you can hear me well. I'm very excited to see this training session happen, and again, a very warm welcome on behalf of the Stockholm Environment Institute to you all. I do hope that this is just the first step in a continued interaction, partnerships, collaboration going forward. Why is it important to use tools to support decision-making in implementing the 2030 Agenda? As Yvonne alluded to, I have been a member of the independent group of scientists preparing the 2023 Global Sustainable Development Report. And I think it comes as no surprise to anyone that we are still not seeing the progress we need to see on the SDGs. Indeed, we see stagnation at this point, halfway to 2030. And we're simply not seeing the full potential of the integrated solutions that the SDG framework promises. We had a pandemic. It actually led to increased inequalities rather than decreased inequalities in many societies and many economies around the world. So we did not manage to find those integrated economic and social solutions. We also saw an increase in explicit and implicit fossil fuel subsidies in many parts of the world. So again, not seeing integrated economic and environmental solutions. And I think as scientists working close to policymakers, we indeed have a lot of sympathy that it's difficult to drive a political agenda of 17 goals. But yet there seems to be a missed opportunity here not to use the SDG framework as a very accepted, very legitimate framework or checklist, if you like, of important considerations when we pursue locally and nationally important policy priorities. So in the report, in the Global Sustainable Development Report, we indeed described SDGs as our best insurance policy to prevent future crises and really ensure that development is sustainable over the long term, and that we find these integrated synergistic solutions that are more than the sum of the parts. In the report, we also share some good news, and this is that we do have now many science-based tools available for policymakers to use. Today, this session will focus on one of them, the SDG Synergies tool, which I'm of course very proud that my colleagues have developed and are now using actively together with policymakers and other stakeholders in many different contexts around the world. It's a free tool, it's openly available, and it's very transparent. However, we also see in our global report that there is a big potential to enhance the use of the tools. Developing the tools is just the first step, of course. We see that very few voluntary national reviews have made use of these tools, but we do have some promising examples of applications at the national government level. We're going to hear about them, a couple of them soon, and also at the local level, where the users have been very good at spotting these practical and integrated solutions to act on. So I'll just close with saying that at the Stockholm Environment Institute, we're very interested in hearing your feedback, the user feedback. How can we make this tool even more user-friendly, more policy relevant? I think we are looking at two issues currently that seem to be important to better consider the time dimension. As an addition to considering the more static picture of synergies and trade-offs, and also to consider transboundary synergies and trade-offs to really ensure that we have transboundary policy coherence. So with that, I finish off and hope this will be a very productive training session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Rosa, for setting the stage, for getting us started in these conversations, and for mentioning some of the things that we're thinking about to improve this methodology, this tool in the future. So that's a good hint of what is coming in the session a little bit later. But we wanted to start with practical examples. We wanted you to hear and see who has used the tool already and see what they have to share from their experience. So I would definitely like to now hand over the floor to Karin Fernando, and she is a senior professional at the Center for Poverty Analysis in Sri Lanka and has experience with the tool in the past. So Karin, if you're there, if you can open your mic and share your experience with us, please.
Good morning to you all in New York, and good afternoon and good evening to you everywhere else. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So let me just talk very quickly about our experience of using it. Actually, in Sri Lanka, we have used it twice for different purposes. The first time was that we were looking to look at synergies and trade-offs among SDGs. And the second time we used it actually was because we were trying to look at synergies and trade-offs across a group of policies. So there in itself, it shows the flexibility of this tool. Actually, it was designed to look at SDGs, but you can also look at it across different policies. So actually even different actions, as long as you set it up correctly. The beauty of the tool really is that it is quite easy to use. It is time consuming because you do have to score, and it depends on how many different variables you want to score. But in essence, once you understand the scoring, how you give the score, it is quite an easy system to use, but it doesn't mean that the outcome is not complex. So I think that is probably the beauty of this model, that for the user, the practitioner, the step is easy, but behind it, there is a lot of work that has gone in to actually understand how these interactions take place. And what is quite difficult to visualize is almost the 3D nature of these relationships. And that is what this tool can do. So that is the positive aspect of the tool. But let me just tell you a little bit about when we used it, what is some of our experience of it. So yes, the tool is good, but setting up the parameters of how you use it is actually really important. You can look at, like for example, you cannot look at interactions across all SDGs. It has so many interactions, and it is really not going to be a feasible process for policymakers to sit down and do. So you need to have some sort of rationalization as to how to cluster or how to group SDGs, or why you would pick a certain group over another. In our example of when we used it for policies, we were trying to understand sustainable agriculture in the context of SDGs and climate change. So we had to look at policy objectives, and even amongst that, we had to set it up. So setting up what you're trying to put into the matrix is really important, because otherwise it can also then spew out something that doesn't make any sense. So doing the setting up of what you want the study to do is important, and also doing literature reviews and doing other backup work, so that you can, once the model has done its, once it gives you the visualization, you're also able to back it up with other evidence, other studies. That is also an important part of this process. Another thing I feel you must remember is that the scoring is subjective. It's literally the people who score it that come up with a rationalization for why, Y2, Y3, Y0. So it's quite important that the scoring is documented. And one of the things actually that was tried in Sri Lanka for the first time was not to have only one group score one group, one set of interactions. So by asking different groups to score the same thing, you can get an average, or you can have two different scores, and the two groups can argue it out and come to a agreed conclusion as to what the score will be. So because it is based on a subjective way of doing the scoring, this idea of doing it with as many groups as possible is important. So that is also one of the, and people need to know it. So the outcome of it is also as good as the people who score it. So that is something to remember. And also to remember that the model itself, the interactions model, is really a tool. It cannot be your final decision maker. It is a guide that helps you make an informed decision on what areas you should prioritize, what synergies may be possible, and what trade-offs may arise. But it needs to be backed with evidence, and in the end, the policy is a choice made because of different reasons that are political, economic, social, the context of the country. But what the tool can give you is like an idea of what those interactions may look like that will help the policymaker make the best decision and have a way of rationalizing why those decisions were made. So those are some of our experience in using it, the versatility of the tool, and actually the visualization really does hit home once you see what you've done with the scores, but really being able to set it up well and back it up with evidence would really help the process also stand as a much more rigorous method. I hope that was helpful. I can answer more questions if needed.
So very much, Karen. Maybe you want to mention what year this was?
So the SDG interactions we did in 2019. And the policy scoring we did quite recently, actually, it was 2021. So
Perfect.
yeah, we
Thank
used
you
it twice.
so very much. Twice, exactly, yes.
We did the same kind of, we also trained a few Sri Lankans. So there was lots of interest amongst them as well on how to use it for different purposes.
Oh, thank you so very much, Karen. This has been really interesting to hear from your perspective, and thank you for highlighting the participatory aspect of it and the people aspect of the process, because that's really important. Even though this is a tool, technology, methodology, science, it really is important to highlight the role that people play in it. So I'm sure there'll be questions about the experience. And I also see already some questions in the chat about asking for the link of the tool. So we'll definitely get there, no worries. And we'll see the tool also being explained. But this is just to give you a context before we move into it. And now I would like to invite Susanna Sunku. And Susanna was, when the methodology was applied in Mongolia, she was the SDG and development policy planning focal point of the government. And at that point, the web-based tool didn't exist yet. So Susanna had a very interesting experience with the methodology that is a little bit different, but we definitely want to hear from you, Susanna, about what you thought of going through the process and what these had, let's say, as an effect in Mongolian policymaking, maybe after the process. So if you're there, Susanna, please open the mic.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Thank you for SEA, UNITAR, and UNITAR for organizing this very enriching event. So I'll briefly explain the experience of Mongolia. So this was back in 2019, similar to Sri Lanka. And as we all know, SDGs are so comprehensive, so many targets, many, indicators and objectives to think about. So as a policy planner at the technical level, the difficulty is we're encountering many different priorities. And for us, it was very important to, first of all, to localize the SDGs to make sure that we were in fact considering national realities, meaning that from a statistics point of view, we are thinking of the available data and the missing data in measuring the performance of SDGs. But then on the more practical side of things, we were fully understanding what the targets and indicators meant for lay people, but also at a more technical and political levels. So it was important for us that the SDGs were fully integrated in Mongolian context. Secondly, we wanted to make sure that in ensuring implementation of the SDGs, we wanted a methodical approach, whether that be combining several different modeling tools, some of them being more economic modeling tools, but then fiscal, but other holistic tools. So we know that traditionally, many of the industries do modeling and calculations and forecasting specifically in their own sectors, but what we were missing was a integrated big picture of how these sectors interacted and what outcomes we would drive for the achievement of the SDGs. So as the planning and development entity in the government, we decided to work with SEI and we've adopted the tool. So when we adopted the SEI Synergies tool, we've actually done a bit of tweaking where we've integrated our long-term national policy targets and objectives, and we've seen the interaction of the long-term national policy across the SDGs that we were nationalizing in parallel. So we've tweaked the tool a bit to make sure that it was really delivering what we were looking for, making sure that there was local level policy coherence at all scales. And thirdly, what we were seeking to achieve was a more participatory approach that was introduced in the development policy planning process itself. So while we were developing this tool, we were in the process of also revising our law on development policy planning, which is basically the main manual or guide for any sector, any different levels of government for planning policies. So we've actually tried to use some of the approaches and the principles and the the framework of the tool in shaping the law and development policy planning. So as a result, we've actually developed a 3-stage process in using the tool. First is, of course, rigorous planning. As the development planning and economic government entity, we've came up with a framework of the targets from the long-term policy that we would look at. And then we would also look at SDGs. So we've kind of created this template for the workshops and the participatory exercises that we were going to have. And then at the second stage, we've organized over 40 different smaller and medium-sized discussion groups, which involved all different kinds of stakeholders within each group. And of course, this takes lots of planning, but we thought it was worth of an investment, considering the outcome that we would be very participatory, I would say, unprecedented in a sense. So we've organized these workshops. We've looked at over 13 major sectors, so light industry, agriculture, transport, energy. And these 13 different sectors trickle down into subsectors. So we wanted to look at the whole economy as well as social and environmental sectors. So once we were done with the workshops, we wanted to make sure that we rally the message and make sure that the lessons learned were in fact being integrated to actual policy planning. So this is when we've used the tool method in 2 ways. First was in our policy planning process, so the legislative processes, the law and development policy planning, also regulations that follow the laws, and then thirdly, the long-term and medium-term policy plans that we're actually including some of these priorities that we've identified with the use of the tool. So all in all, the big takeaways for us was first time actually in the government, many of the sectoral, technical, and senior, medium level officials sat together and they talked about industry issues that were often overlooked by the others. So for instance, mining sector officials were now thinking about health impacts or climate change or climate adaptation. So there was a lot of peer-to-peer learning. Of course, capacity building was inherently there. And ultimately, we ended up also using the tool for our first volunteer national review, which we've presented to the HLPF in 2019. So in thinking of the major issues and coherence overall across policies, we wanted to make sure that with the tool, we are able to see some of the priorities that the government would focus in the medium term, as well as which SDGs we would need to think as a leverage point. So all in all, ultimately, by doing this prioritization and coherence process in a very transparent and participatory way, there was greater consensus that we would not be able to otherwise achieve. So this was a big achievement, I would say. And lessons learned, just to wrap up, I think number one, we are very proud that we were able to do rigorous planning and facilitation in preparing each of the stages, making sure that the workshops, when the workshop started, the participants had what they needed. They were aware of why the certain targets were chosen or how the tool worked. So it was all led by government officials. I myself did the trainings and facilitations as well. So it was important to have that equal level of understanding and no language barrier. So this was a very important lessons learned that I would also mention. So I'll stop here and would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so very much, Susanna. This was really interesting to hear from the perspective and how it was used afterwards. And from your time in the government, it was really important for us to hear what it is like to go through this process. And thank you again for the time that you put into the process and also on trying to make use of the results. So this was really interesting for me to hear again also the details of the experience, and I'm sure there will be questions for these, but thank you so very much. We will now, after these initial, let's say, setting the stage, go into our technical briefing, which means we get to see a little bit more of the methodology behind the tool and what is making it work. And for these, I would like to welcome our dear researcher at SEI, Daniela Maestre, to start walking you through the methodology. Please, Daniela.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you also for being here, Karin, Susana, for sharing your experience. It's very exciting to hear from partners that have used the tool. I am very happy to present Synergies here with my colleague Efraín Hernandez. And this is the agenda for the presentation. I am going to start by introducing the Stockholm Environment Institute. We will present the SDG Synergies tool and its methodology, which is cross-impact analysis. We will follow with use cases of the tool and national and subnational applications of the tool. And we will end by the demo or the tutorial on how to create and score a cross-impact matrix of interactions directly into the tool. And we will finish by the Q&A. The Stockholm Environment Institute is an international nonprofit organization. It's a research and policy organization. Its main focus is to bridge science, policy, and practice. The headquarters is located in Sweden. We have 8 centers all over the world, and SEI headquarters, SEI York, SEI US, SEI Tallinn, SEI Oxford, SEI Asia, SEI Africa, and SEI Latin America, with more than 300 researchers. This regional presence allows us to be grounded in local realities, ensuring long-term engagement and focusing in setting the right agendas for each region. Our vision is a sustainable, prosperous future for all, and our mission is to support decision-making and induce change towards sustainable development around the world by providing integrated knowledge that bridges science, policy, and practice in the field of development and environment. And it's a research institute that covers a wide range of knowledge and related activities based on science to address sustainability issues. Researchers produce transdisciplinary knowledge and software tools, engage with local partners in decision making, in policy making, and conduct training, and much more. And for instance, one of the
Dani, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to ask if you can get closer to the microphone. Your audio started breaking up at the moment for some reason.
Perfect, thank you. I will try to speak louder if it helps. It's better now?
Yes, it's better. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. SDG Synergies is one of the tools that SEI developed, and it was designed by researchers at headquarters in Latin America. And I will delve into the tool. SDG Synergies is a practical tool for understanding how groups of policy areas and targets interact. Here is a screenshot of the homepage, and here is also the link. We will send it to you later. At the web page, you can find the email to request for an account. To use it, it is open access and it's free. And you can download the manual. You can also watch the tutorial and read some of the testimonials and experience of using the tool, and of course, signing up for more information. The SDG Synergies tool helps the user to record, visualize, and analyze how multiple policy objectives interact. And the interactions are based on a participatory discussion scoring process, as we heard from Karin and Susana. The tool develops a matrix of cross-impact interactions between all the objectives being considered. This reveals how progress on one might affect progress on the other and vice versa. For example, here we have an image of a matrix. It has some objectives in the rows and columns, and here we have a classification from strongly promoting to strongly restricting, from the interaction of those objectives. But we are going to see this in further detail later. There are some options of visualizing the results of the interactions in the tool. Through the use of network visualization and analytics, SDG Synergies can reveal complex relationships between policies. For example, how the effects of an interaction might affect the entire system. This is very interesting because we are with the tool, we can also, more than seeing how policy A impacts policy B, we also can see how the interaction impacts the whole system or being impacted by the system. Visualizations and analytics can inform decisions about how to prioritize or sequence the implementation of different objectives. And here we have some images from the tool, from networks that these are very useful to prioritize clusters of interactions between targets, for example, the SDG targets, for example. The SDG Synergies approach seeks a coherent implementation of the 2030 Agenda and other public policy agendas. In this sense, the tool can be used in any context and sector of public policy. This tool was originally designed to support governments on implementing the Agenda 2030, but it can be fully customized to any policy agenda, goal, or target. For example, in this image, we have some SDG targets and some groups of SDG targets, and also the one objective of one NDC of any specific country. Now I will pass the word to my colleague Efraim. He's going to talk about the methodology of the tool and use case. Go ahead, Efraim.
Thank you, Daniela. Please let me know if there are any issues with my audio. But what I'm going, okay, thank you. What I'm going to explain is just a little bit of the background of the methodology, and also we're going to show you some of the some images of the interface that we use in the platform. So first of all, as my colleagues have mentioned, the tool was developed by SEI based on a methodology that was proposed by SEI scientists through various academic publications, one of which is listed here on the screen. And we developed SDG Synergies, the tool, to make this methodology more convenient and easier to implement in workshops. Therefore, I just wanted to mention a little bit about as I mentioned, the background, the theoretical background of the tool, which uses cross-impact analysis. So in the previous slides, we have seen some examples of cross-impact matrices. This will become much clearer once we show the demo of the tool. But basically, cross-impact analysis allows us to see interactions between different policy actions in this case. And in this regard, I'm certain that you are familiar with the concept of SDG interactions. As we have mentioned, the 2030 agenda, a complex political agenda that touches virtually every aspect of public policy, and therefore one action is going to affect the other. In this regard, there have been various methodologies that have been put forward to see how these interactions develop. And there are two concepts that we will be using throughout the rest of the presentation and the demo, which are synergies and trade-offs. So synergies are when two policies reinforce each other. Traditionally, one could say that the SDG 6, which has to do with water governance, has synergies with other SDGs, which have to do with nature, with ecosystems or conservance. Therefore, synergies are positive impacts, positive spillovers between the SDGs in this case. On the other hand, the trade-offs are when two SDGs can limit each other. For instance, traditionally, you could say that SDG 8, which has to do with economic growth, in some cases can impact negatively other SDGs, such as SDG 15, which has to do with ecosystems. So trade-offs, you could see them not as a way of saying that one SDG should not be achieved or a political action should not be performed, but rather as an opportunity to mitigate these effects and achieve political coherence. Okay, so I was talking about the methodologies and how there have been different methodologies that have tried to see these synergies and trade-offs. And you could categorize the different methodologies that exist in quantitative and qualitative methodologies. Quantitative methodologies are mostly characterized by using indicators and other numerical data to find these synergies and trade-offs, and they use agent-based modeling, statistical modeling, and other methods. On the other hand, there are methodologies which are more qualitative and that try to assess subjectively how one SDG affects another. Our methodology, you could say, it's a mix between these two categories, because as we were saying previously, the main input for the tool or for the methodology is experts and stakeholder knowledge, which is subjective. But the tool also uses, as Daniela was mentioning, network analysis and cross-impact analysis to find calculations and scores and see what SDGs can be more impactful than others and which have specific scores that are important for implementation. Correct? So next slide, please. Okay. So here what we are looking at is just some pictures of how the platform looks like once we enter it. We wanted to show you here just some aspects of the of how to practically how to use the tool in practice. And the first thing is that the methodology is based on a 7-point scale scoring system, which you can see on the left. So on the positive side of the numbers, we have from weakly promoting to strongly promoting, depicting synergies. Then the zero value, a value of 0, means that there's no influence between one SDG and the other. And on the negative side, we have the trade-off from weakly restricting to strongly restricting. So once a user accesses the tool, they are shown an empty cross-impact matrix, such as the one we see below towards the left. We see a couple of rows. And once a user, a participant, clicks on an interaction, a window such as the one we're looking at pops up. And the next question appears. If progress is made on target 6 in this example, how does this influence progress on target 8? And the user has to score this interaction using the 7-point scale. Then usually it is recommended, it is actually one of the features of this methodology, it is recommended that participants put a justification for the interaction that they're scoring. This helps the organizers of the workshop and the scientists or the people that are going to analyze the data to have this sort of qualitative data organized and to see how it correlates with the scores of each participant. Also, the participants can say if a score is uncertain or certain, which has other implications also for the analysis of the data. Just some another practical things. This will become much more apparent when during the demo, but the matrix is scored from left to right. This will become more clear as I mentioned. And in this moment, I would like to mention that in the last part of this presentation, we will be having a demo of the tool, and we wanted to ask to the assistants here in this webinar if you would like to participate. If you would like to participate, we will assign you a token to access the tool in a bit, so you can score an example of a matrix for yourself. We have limited tokens to access the tool, so please bear with us in that regard, and also bear with us in the sense that this is also a remote session, and there will be some difficulties in assigning tokens. But if you would like to participate, please let us know on the Q&A, and in a bit we will give you a token, and we'll give you instructions on how to access the tool. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the website where you can access the tool. I don't know if we already have put forward on the chat the link, but if not, I guess we can do that at this in this moment. And just to say, we have over 100 users corresponding to over 100 institutions in 15 different countries, and there have been different user cases that we will talk about in a bit. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we have been mentioning, the tool has been originally designed to assist governments and SDG practitioners, academic organizations, policymakers, etc., to analyze interactions between the SDGs. But as other presenters have mentioned, the tool also has the feature to include different agendas. So this also, many of these features for these use cases we will be talking about can also be applied to other agendas, not only the SDGs, correct? So the first one is if a country wants to localize the SDGs, this means to align them, to map the policies that they have to the SDGs, and see how one, for instance, one water governance policy correlates to not only the goal number 6, but also to its target. You can use this tool to make that alignment and have it organized. Then the second use case is policy coherence for a specific sector. So when we say policy coherence in terms of the SDGs, what we are meaning is that this scorings and this analysis, this interactions analysis, can be used to, on the one hand, to prioritize policies. So, for instance, if we have an SDG that has many different, or that has many different synergies, then that SDG can be said it could be prioritized. And whereas if you see a trade-off, then that trade-off needs to be mitigated, correct? So in terms of when we talk about the 2030 agenda, policy coherence means to make use of this scoring of this data to strategize the implementation of local policies or the national policies. Then another use case is to analyze interaction between the SDGs and other agendas. So further up in the presentation, we will see some examples where the SDGs were analyzed versus other agendas, such as the NDCs or other different political agendas. Then another use case is to analyze interactions between different geographical scales. So one important aspect of SDG interactions is that they are context-based. This means that one SDG can have a synergy in one country. One SDG and one SDG with another SDG can have a synergy in one country, whereas in another country that can have a trade-off. So this means that these interactions are context-based. But what happens is we want to see the interactions between different countries, between different contexts. So the tool allows us to, because it uses cross-impact analysis, which has also been used in scenario analysis, it allows us to conduct this sort of geographical spillover analysis. But I would also like to mention that at the moment we're further developing SDG synergies to make this geographical spillover effects or geographical interaction analysis more convenient and more like to have more features in the tool to make it much easier. Correct? Next slide, please. Then some other more practical use cases. As we were mentioning in the beginning, the tool the results from the tool have been used in voluntary national reviews, just in Mongolia, as we were mentioning in the beginning, but other countries have used it as well. In Sweden, for instance, it has also been used for voluntary local reviews, VLRs. Some examples that we have is in Taiwan. There have also been many municipalities in Sweden that have used it. More recently, in Monterrey, in Mexico, they also used it for the voluntary local review. And as I was saying before, we have over 100 institutions using the tool, and many of these are local governments and governments that have this idea in mind. Then another use case is to see how the 2030 agenda are aligned with other policy agendas, but before I was saying more like the NDCs, more international agendas, but this can also be done against national agendas, right? We will see an example. And this can be also sectorial, right? We also have example, which is the last use case. We also have examples where the tool has been used for specific sectors, like the mining energy sector in Colombia, as we will see, and see how this specific sector interacts with others and have that sector as the focus of the analysis. So these are some of the use cases that we can present. But just quickly, I would like to mention that since the tool uses cross impact analysis, it can be used in many different contexts. Here we are talking about maybe policy design or policy analysis use cases, but the tool can also be used in scenario analysis for other different contexts, such as disaster risk reduction, circular economy, etc. But for this presentation, we wanted to keep it focused for policy analysis. So next slide, please. I'll leave now the presentation for my colleague Daniela, who is going to talk about some of the workshops and some of the analysis that we have conducted across the world using the tool.
Thank you, Efrain. And so I'm going to be speaking about some example of SDG interaction analysis in Mongolia, Sri Lanka, and Colombia. While I'm doing this, Efrain and the team will be sending the tokens to the people that asked to participate. And as we heard from Susana, in the Mongolia's case, they tested and refined the overall methodological approach to policy alignment and target setting in the water sector related to the objectives in Mongolia's Sustainable Development Vision. This is an example of using the methodology to a specific sector, in this case the water sectors, and taking in and relating and making the relationship with a national development plan. In this case, the Mongolia Sustainable Development Vision. After applying the methodology, the government adopted the results of the interactions and presented the results as part of the 2019 Voluntary National Review at HLPF. And again, this is another example of how to use the methodology to measure SDG progress in processes such as the voluntary national reviews or the voluntary local reviews. Also, in the case of Sri Lanka, the goal was to apply the tool to assess policy coherence in the National Development Plan. We experience a transfer of knowledge for the government to apply the methodology and to other policies. And as a workshop participant said, the method is useful to get the overview. We often think about how one target influences others, but not about directions, and not assigning a value, and not in a systematic way. And I think that this encapsulates all the rationality of the tool, because we can think about how one target influences the other and vice versa, assign a value, and then prioritize interactions, and then how those interactions impact the whole system. In Colombia, SCI conducted an initiative, a pilot multi-stakeholder initiative through a regional and a national case study. The national case study was in Colombia and the regional was in the Antioquia department. This was the first exercise of this kind in Latin America and the Caribbean, and it involved 100 national and 60 regional participants, mostly from government, but also from international organizations, academia, industrial sector, and civil society. This experience of Colombia highlighted the potential of using this approach to explore the impacts of the national development plans, priorities, and goals on the subnational level, and to compare synergies and trade-offs between both scales. The results from the Antioquia analysis differed from those at the national level, showing that the way in which objectives are interacting is highly dependent on local context. Other examples of interaction analysis between SDGs and other agendas, from one hand, we have this example of multi-agenda analysis. It was the case of policy coherence for the mining sector in Colombia. The objective of this exercise was to improve policy coherence between 3 different policy agendas in the context of Colombia's mining and energy planning. The 3 agendas were the SDGs, the Colombia's National Determined Contribution, NDC, under the Paris Agreement, and the OECD Good Practice Guidance. In total, 61 targets were selected from the 3 agendas, chosen according to their relevance to Colombia's mining and energy sector. Taking a different approach, we have an example of multi-scale scenario analysis using the tool in the state of Nuevo León in Mexico. Through a workshop using SDG Synergies, we analyzed scenario interactions at 3 geographical scales: the metropolitan zone of Monterrey, the state of Nuevo León, and the national level, which was Mexico. The use of a scenario analysis together with the SDG Synergies tool informed the climate change plan for the state, considering relevant geographical scales for the climate change plan. The analysis was based on the knowledge of local, regional, and national experts and stakeholders. Okay, so we'll now move on to the tutorial, the demo, on how to develop a cross-impact matrix of interactions. We will do some hands-on work directly in the tool. And Efrain, if you're ready, please share your screen.
Yes, thank you, Daniela. Okay. So I will be sharing my screen with the tool directly, so you can see some of the features that the tool has, and also we want to sort of showcase how easy it is to create a project. So what we are looking at right now is the administrator access. The tool has two different access: the administrator access and the user access. Once you request an account, we create an institution within the tool and an administrator account that can be used to create other administrator accounts. Administrators are able to create events, to create tokens for participants, and as I mentioned, to create more administrators. So here we are already looking at the administrator view. Here I would like to mention that the tool is available into languages in Spanish and in English. So obviously here we're looking at in English. Firstly, I would like to show that one of the main features that the tool has is that you can create other agendas. So we have the Sustainable Development Goals and their targets already preloaded in the tool, which means that you can already create an event using them. But there's also the feature to create different agendas with ad hoc goals. So you just on the left side menu, you just click on agendas and create a new one where you will be able to add goals, right? Here this takes some time to map the different, or to place the different goals and agendas that you would like to recreate in the tool. It takes some time to put them in the tool and to select images if you would like that. But it's pretty straightforward. But then I would like to create a project, just an example of a project, just to show you how easy it is. And we will be replicating the same event that we will be using for the demo, but I will create like a second one, alternative one. So you need to select a start date and an end date through which the event will become active in the platform. So right now I'm not going to leave it active. Well, I'm going to create it, but I'm not going to leave it active because we will be using the other one. So I'm going to put it in active. Sorry. Then from the Sustainable Development Goals, we select the ones that we want to use in the workshop. So for this demo, we will be using the ones that are being talked about in this HLPF, which is SDG 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. Correct. So I'm just going with 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. Then to create participants, it's also really straightforward. You only select the number of participants that we want to have in the workshop. There can be as many as there are no limitations in this regard. And there's also the feature to have the participant with limited answers. So that sometimes because of time reasons, maybe the matrix is pretty large, and you have to sort of divide the exercise, correct? So this is where you can choose that. Once you have the tool created, I'm just going to show it how an empty matrix looks like. This is what an empty matrix looks like, correct? And this is the role of the administrator to create an event with a matrix. Once it's created, once the matrix is created, users can access it through the user interface, which is a different interface, right? So we shared on the chat right now a link to access the tool to the event that we are going to have as a demo. So I just want to make sure that the link is available in the chat. If not, please ask us in Q&A, and we have a colleague send you the link. Once you have accessed this link, you will be shown this window where you can choose the event that we're going to be practicing on. Then you click on next, and here you have to input your token. So I have my token already here. And you click on login. And this is the window that the participant will be shown. If you, as I was mentioning before, the matrix is scored from left to right, beginning on the top row, correct? And once, yes, and just to mention, if you scroll your mouse, your pointer on any of the goals that are on the matrix, the name of the goal of the SDG and its description appears on the left. So if you click on the interaction, this is the window that pops up. And as you can see, the question that I was mentioning before, if progress is made on target 6, how does this influence progress on target 7? So we're going to make a couple of interaction examples of interactions, but then we will show other features of the tool, and we'll leave around 10-15 minutes for each participants that wanted to participate in the demo to score. So in the end, we will show you the full metrics with the scores from the participants. So for instance, here we're looking at SDG 6 towards 7. If progress is made on SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, how does this influence progress on target 7? So here I could think maybe that having having a good water governance, or having integrated water management can help the good health of the water system in any given context. And if in that country, water and rivers, superficial water, is used to create energy with dams, for instance, then you could maybe say that having this water system in a healthy way could help create more energy with dams and hydroelectric power. So I would say maybe that there's a synergy here. I'm just going to put +1, and the justification is good water management can impact water ecosystems in a healthy way, so that rivers can be used to produce energy. Then you can select if the score is certain or uncertain. If you are sure of your justification, usually you just leave it as certain. But if you are uncertain, this means that there might be some things that can be relevant to the context in which some political issues, or maybe some other difficulties, which can make the score uncertain. then you click on send, and the score appears on the matrix. You can always come back and change the score if you would like, or the justification. Just click on the instruction again and place a new score. Then I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to make another interaction, just to show how the first interaction that we did was from SDG 6 towards 7, but we also have to do from SDG 7 towards 6, right? So here I wanted to show that it's not always the case that the same interaction goes both ways. Maybe from 6 to 7 there's a synergy, but maybe from 7 to 6 there can be a trade-off. So here we could justify the use of rivers to produce electrical power can have a negative impact on ecosystems. Correct? And then here I just wanted to show an example of a trade-off. But usually what we do is we score from left to right, and we go from the top route towards the bottom. Correct? So here we're gonna I'm gonna stop scoring this matrix, but the participants that wanted to continue scoring the matrix, please continue to do so, and in the end we will show you the full results. But now I wanted to show you some other features of the tool, and for this we're going to show you some full results of real exercises. And here, for instance, we're looking at the national analysis of Colombia, for which several targets were chosen. Each participant in this, as Daniela was mentioning, in this event, we have around 100 participants, and the tool captures the score of every participant, and it automatically gives you the average of this sum of scores to determine what is going to be the interacting score between the two targets. And in the end, what the method does is it sums up all the scoring, all the scores of one particular target in this case. So on the right side, towards the end of the rows, we have a number. A high number means that a target has a high synergic effect with the rest of the agenda, meaning that it could be prioritized. Whereas a low score means that it might not be as important for prioritization. Whereas the values on the bottom of the columns shows the level of impact one target or one goal has from the rest of the targets, from the rest of the agenda. So a very high number on this score, on this value, means that this target can be very positively impacted if the whole agenda is achieved. Correct? So here, just to show you some of the features of the tool, we can arrange the order of the matrix to show which targets had the highest score. So in this particular exercise for Colombia, we can see that targets 8.4, sustainable consumption and production, and 11.6, environmental impact of cities, had a really synergic effect. Whereas there are some targets that have even trade-offs, such as target 2.3, which is agricultural land, which presents trade-offs with different targets, particularly with target 6.3, which is water quality. Then another another visualization that the tool has is the satellite graphs, which allows you to inspect more closely the interactions of one particular target. So before we were saying that target 2.3% trade-offs, and we can see them here, right? We can inspect them more closely. So here, these are the this is the out degree. This means the effect that target 2.3 has on the rest of the targets. But we can also look at the impact 2.3 has from other targets, and we can see how it's different, right? The thing that I was mentioning before, that it's not always that the two-way interaction is going to be the same. There can be a synergy from 6 to 7 and a trade-off from 7 to 6, I think in the demo that we were showing. Then we also have the network view, which gives you a more dynamic view of the matrix. Here we can see the strength and the value of specific interactions in a network view, right? So yellow and red edges or connections mean trade-offs, whereas blue edges or connections mean synergies. Then you can also show the clusterization of the analysis of the targets. In this particular example, there were no clusters, but what happens with the clusterizations, it shows you associations of targets that are highly connected between each other, right? Then just to mention that all of these data can be downloaded. The matrix can be downloaded as an image here, and the satellite graphs can be also downloaded as images, and the network. But also the justification from the participants. So for the justification of the participants, I'm going to show you a different example. One of which one of the exercises that Daniela mentioned. And this is the cross scale analysis that we conducted in Nuevo León in Monterrey to see how climate change policies impacted the SDGs and other agendas. And as you can see, you can select, or you can organize the scores in different ways, from one target to another target, or you can search by token, right? All of these can be downloaded in the end in a table format, in an Excel sheet format, for instance. Finally, the data can be downloaded in any in different formats, so that it can be further analyzed numerically. You can download it as an CSV format, for instance, if you want to further use the scores in a programming environment, for instance, in Python or R. You can download all this data here and use it for further analysis. So now I think we can take a look at the matrix as we were scoring it live. So we will take a look if it's complete. Yes, it's complete. Let me, I don't know how to remove the menu that's here on the bottom. So I'm going to make the screen a bit smaller so I can show you everything. Here we have the full results from our demo. If we arrange the rows or the data by the sum of the interactions, we can see which is the SDG that scored the highest. In this case, it was score 17 with a score of 5. Then we have goal 7 with a score of 4, but goal 7 has a trade-off with SDG 6 here. Then the ones that scored the weakest are SDG 11, right? Sustainable cities and communities, which has a couple of trade-offs. And then also SDG 9, which also has a couple of trade-offs. So the way you would use this data in a policy design or a policy evaluation context is that according to this little exercise we had, goal 17 is the one that should be prioritized in the implementation of the SDGs or operationalization of the SDGs due to this scoring, or goal 7, or maybe in that order, right? You would prioritize goal 17 first and then goal 7. And then you can inspect the different trade-offs that the goals have, just to see what the participants are saying in this regard, and see if there's a way to mitigate this. So we'll take a look at some of the justifications. So okay, so we have that 11 trade-offs, right? So I'm gonna see. There are no comments. There were no comments for this particular one. But then, yeah. So these are the full results from our little exercise. Daniela, I don't know if it's time for Q&A right now. I think it is, right?
Yes, we can follow with the Q&A, or if you have specific questions from this exercise. Many thanks for the people that participated. Efrain, can you show please a little bit the matrix again?
Yes.
I just wanted to recall the question that we used to fill the matrix, and it is if progress is made on objective X, how it impacts objective Y, for example. So in the matrix, you can see the description. You have not to learn them by heart, but you can see the definition of each objective by scrolling. And yes, right, just like that. You can see the text and you can show the interaction. Just wanted to highlight that, and we can follow with the Q&A.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna leave the matrix here for the Q&A session if you have, or just for a couple of moments, so if you have questions about that. But okay.
So we can scroll down through the queues to the questions, and then we will pick some to respond.
Okay.
I don't know if you have seen one interesting question that you would like to address, Efrain.
Yes. So I was looking at this one before, which I think it's interesting. Are these tools uniform in application among different nations, and are they mandatory for all countries, regions, and communities to use in order to be synergy with the policies at the global stage? Here, regarding this question, from our experience, it is much more how can I say complete and more solid to present for instance, a voluntary national review or a voluntary local review, conducting this sort of analysis, because the complexity of the 2030 agenda and how one and the fact that you cannot look at the goals as silos and as let's say as goals by themselves without considering the rest, is at the core of the design of the 2030 agenda, right? So in this regard, even if it's not mandatory in this regard, and some BNRs and some VLRs don't conduct this sort of analysis, it is highly recommended that governments look at policy coherence among the SDGs to report. So that would be my answer to that question. Then,
thank you, Ephraim. I wrote another question. So here we have a comment. Thank you for your interesting presentation. And the question is, the tool seems that governments are powerful enough to implement coherent decisions. But does any government have enough expertise in one place to use this tool properly? Are the results replicated with a different department or participant groups? Thank you for the question. I would like to say that from our experiences, we always invite key stakeholders from governments, academia, civil societies, and they have the local knowledge to score interactions, and they always receive the support from SEI from the beginning to construct the matrix, to apply the matrix in a workshop, to then analyze the results. So I guess this tool is very powerful to help coherent decision making, and governments are asked to use it from us. We can support their analysis. Just asking, just giving them the access through email, or even using it in real life workshops, virtually and in person. That will be all for that question.
thank you, Daniela. So we have another question from it says, what about governments that are not interested in Synergies policies? In my country, the former president, Bolsonaro, his trade-off policies were not by accident. I am worried that this tool is presented as a shortcut to the SDGs, but SDGs won't work with shortcut. Government must not be allowed to get away by using a tool instead of doing hard work, like giving democratic power to local people or allowing people to go to judges for relief. I think this is a super interesting concern because it's true. It is the 2030 agenda was also designed with the notion of leaving no one behind, correct? And all these tools and all these methods that have been developed to analyze interactions have to take this into account. So one of the characteristics of our tool in particular, it is that it's based on yes, it's based on network analysis and cross impact analysis, but at its core, it's the participation of the stakeholders and the experts that participate during the workshops. And one of the, you could say, theoretical groundings of the tool is the notion that many people or different participants are going to have different perspectives of these interactions. In this regard, one challenge is to be able to include in the process as many people, not only experts and decision makers, but also the people that are subject of these policies, to be able to participate in this sort of analysis, so that their worldviews are contrasted against the ones from the decision makers, from the politicians, from the experts, etc. So in the end, this tool also in a workshop environment where we are making people discuss before they score, for instance, we are creating these spaces of political political coordination and participation. So that would be my answer to that question. We have more questions. Daniela, would you like to answer one?
Yes. So some people is asking about if they can download the tool is not available for download, but it is an online tool. So you only need internet access, you only need a computer or a cell phone with internet access and the link of the event. Also, here's a question: if there's a report that summarizes the tool, yes, we have the web page that has the experiences, the testimonials, the methodology, and information on how to request an account to use the tool. We are going to send this link right now. Ephraim, I guess here's an interesting question, and we can end with that question. I'm going to send it to you through the chat.
Okay.
And here, hope you received it, and I guess that for the time we can.
Yes. Okay, so this is brilliant. I can't wait to put it to use in the context of the UK government. One question on demo I wasn't clear about. Did you say the model is capable of scoring an average across numerous workshop participator answers and thinking of varying views among different stakeholders? Yes. So once you create an event and you have the cross impact matrix, any given number of participants with a token that score that matrix will have an impact in that average of numerical average of the score. So for instance, in the one that we were showing for the national analysis of Colombia, those scores were the average of the complete 100 participants that scored the interaction. But then again, I think also in the question you're asking if it's possible to add up the scores from different matrices. I don't know if that's something you were also asking, but that's well, if that's a question, that's a feature that we are thinking of in this new iteration of SDG Synergies that we are developing, this new development. So we are also looking at ways in which we can compare the matrices from different events, from different contexts, and see how if they can be added up or if they have any impact and or interaction with each other. So I hope with these comments I answered your question.
Maybe one thing to mention, if I would be, that it is in the chat at the moment. Daniela has posted the link for you to all go to the tool and review it, read the manual. There's a short manual, a video on how to use it. There's case examples of where it has been used before and on what topics. And there's also information on how to contact us to request access to the tool if you want to use it yourself. So everything that you need to know if you're interested in continuing the conversation with us and on using this tool will be on that website for you to have access to. And we will be, of course, also very open to continue answering questions over email and to continue sharing information on new case studies as they develop. But if that is okay with Ephraim and Daniela, I think that we can probably thank our participants for attending the session, for being very patient with a demo that we would, of course, would have loved to do in person with all of you so that we go through the details and have the questions in live mode. That usually helps a lot. So thank you very much for being open to participating in the exercise, to our speakers for setting the stage and letting us know how these type of tools and methodologies can help us accelerate SDGs in a way that is meaningful and strategic, and also how they have used it in their country. But as you'll see on the website, this has been used in many other countries, in Colombia and the European Union, in different industries. I saw one of the questions in the Q&A was also about particular businesses perhaps using the tool, and that has also been done with the steel industry, for example, in Sweden, or the mining sector in Colombia. So it's really a very versatile and diverse approach that can be applied to many different contexts. And we love your questions. We thank you so much for being here, for participating. Thank you, Efraim and Daniela, for walking us through it and making us understand how everything works. And have a fantastic rest of the day and a good program to those in New York at HLPF. And thank you so very much for attending our session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for the amazing session. We are going to have an in-person session in the afternoon at the United Nations headquarters in the conference room 5. If you happen to be in New York and have access to the UN headquarters, please feel free to join us. Otherwise, I will see you around. Goodbye.